I often wonder what it means to be awakened. That's the question that a lot of people ask. And we all have different answers, but the answers are always the same. I'm going to try to explain to you what it means to be awakened. But first, I'm going to start with something about myself and what happened to me. I started out most like everybody else. I believed in the system. I believed that Republicans were right and Democrats were wrong, and that government was flawed, but it was necessary and it was just, and it did all these things for us. But as time grew, as I got older, I started to see things differently. I started to become bitter. And then in 2001, when I was in high school, the World Trade Center was attacked. And that inspired me to join the military. And when I was in the military, I had emotions stamped out. And I was taught to follow orders and not ask questions, to just do as I was told. When I was in high school, I was president of Bible Club. I was a devout Christian. I read my Bible every day before I went to school. Sometimes I would get up 2 hours beforehand. So to say that I know the Bible front to back is not an understatement. I was mentored and I was groomed by the leadership of my church to be the leader of youth. And it was said that I had a gift for eloquent speaking and the ability to communicate and to get points across. And I was trained, in a sense, to preach to people. It's kind of funny how that worked out. When I got out of the military, I was lost. I had lost all sense of compassion, and I wandered through life for a few years, and I didn't know where I was going, what I was doing. I met someone who radically changed my life. Most of it wasn't for good. And the whole time that we were together, I had something in the back of my mind, just a thought really, more like a feeling, and it was go to Washington. Something about Washington State called to me, and I couldn't tell you what it was then. And I used to always joke with this girlfriend of mine that if we ever broke up, that's where I would go. And I was a man of my word, because we did break up. And not long after that, I decided to move to Washington, and I had no clue what I was doing. And so out of a hat, I picked the city of Bellingham. And everything changed. I met somebody there who was very profound in my awakening. She constantly corrected me, always pointed out when I was making generalizations or stereotypes. I had considered myself to be very open-minded, and that I wasn't a racist, and that I wasn't this, and I wasn't that. But I was so ignorant to my own speech and my words. And we fought all the time. But she woke me up in a way. And I remember I started writing down all of these things, all of these words of advice, and what the fallacies of logic were. And I wasn't dumb to begin with, but in my arrogance, I thought that there was no fixing, no improvement, that I was as good as I was going to get. and that I was superior to other people. And then, of course, we broke up because I couldn't stand it, but her words stayed with me for a long time. And to be awakened, there's always warning signs. You start to question society, and you start calling it the Matrix, and you start seeing how people are plugged into the Matrix. And you don't know how to respond to it. You don't know how to unplug yourself. And for a long time, I used to always say that I had one foot in society and one foot out of it, and that I was afraid to commit to either, because I started realizing that what society stood for was a lie, and that I had become just like my parents. I had become indebted to this society through monetary and physical labor, and I was a slave. And I knew I was a slave. And I wanted to escape, but I didn't know how. And then I met a man who taught me about weed and taught me about other different types of hallucinogenics and psychedelics. And then I discovered mushrooms, magic mushrooms. And when I woke up, it was an awakening, for sure. I had taken a dose of mushrooms that was far too high for any person to take, especially if they had no tolerance for it. And I remember the moment that everything clicked. I started freaking out. And just like when you take mushrooms, you have an up. And this up is the equivalent of getting on an elevator on the first floor and getting shot to the 10,000th floor at a really fast pace. And you're screaming on the inside, and you don't know what's going on, you just want it to stop. And I thought I was going crazy. But once you get to the top of that building, you get out and you look over the side of the building and you can see everything. My eyes had been opened. I saw everything as clear as day. At a certain point, I had closed my eyes, and all these different patterns and weird gyroscopic motions that were going on when I had my eyes closed, I'd stopped trying to focus, and I stopped trying to make sense of it. And that's when I saw all of these images converge into one image in the middle. And it looked like almost like a Buddha statue, where his hands are in a triangle and he's sitting Indian style. And I realized that that was the divine being, but that divine being was me. And that everybody is the divine being. Everything is the divine being. But it doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it God, you can call it nature, you can call it Taoism, you can call it Buddhism. We are one with everything. So let me tell you what it means to be awakened. And the best way that I can equate it is to the Joker. I'm going to borrow a metaphor from a philosopher by the name of Alan Watts. And he described it perfectly. A joker, not a funny ha-ha joker. Imagine a joker as though in a deck of cards. The joker is wild. The joker can represent any card. It has no numerical value. It can be an ace, it can be a 3, it can be a 10, it can be a jack, it can be a king. The joker can play any role. That's the first thing that you have to understand. When someone is awake, they become a joker. In ancient days, there was a court jester, and a lot of people assume that the court jester was a fool, or someone that was not all there upstairs, and they just made inappropriate comments, and the kings and queens and all the noblemen and all the noble ladies found it funny. But that's not exactly how it went. You see, a court jester was in place to remind the king of his humility, to remind the king that he was just a man, and to not take things so seriously. Because when you become awakened, you realize that we take life so seriously, and that everything is a game. Everything is a game. We have invented these things called social institutions. And I don't just mean banks. I don't just mean the government and all of its affiliations. I don't just mean money. Beauty are concepts of what is beautiful and what is not. Our concepts of what is healthy and what is not. Our concepts of what is accepted and what is not. Laws, rules, regulations. It's all a game. They're not mere games, but they are games. And one who is awakened, the Joker, sees through these games and he gets the giggles, because he sees all of these people so serious about things that don't really exist. To be awakened is to see that, and to understand that our concept of what we call reality is nothing more than a play. It's theater. It's an act. In Hindu philosophy, there is the divine being Shiva. And Hindus believe that Shiva got bored and decided to get himself lost in everything and everyone around what is this universe, and that everyone has Shiva in him. Everyone is Shiva in disguise. And so when I say that I realized I was divine, I didn't mean God in the sense of the Christian God. But I didn't also mean that I was divine in the way of the Hindu God. I meant that I am a part of a beautiful and harmonious interconnection with everything that goes on in this universe. And while I depend on this universe to survive, I need air to breathe. I need water to live. I need food to sustain my energy. And I depend on all of those things to exist. But the part that Westerners have a hard time coming to grasp with is that the universe too equally depends on me. We are not some little small, wretched subjects that is just thrown out into the universe and is out to get us. We're not controlled by the universe or by nature any more than we control it. But even if that's true, even if nature does dictate what we do and how we act, then you must also agree that we dictate it. Because we turn what the sun is doing into light. We turn oxygen into air. We turn sound into music. So to be awakened, you strip down all of your concepts, all of the abstractions, the idea that money is real, the idea that laws are real. They're not. Money is a tool that is used to measure wealth. It replaced bartering so that we didn't have to carry so much stuff around. But we have this hang-up that money is real. That is just insane to me now. And I see it so much clearly than I ever did before. We spend so much of our lifetime sacrificing our health for money. But we inevitably spend the rest of our lives sacrificing our money for our health. And when you're awake, you realize that that's just a big joke. And I find it funny. But to be awakened is not easy, because you still exist in a society that you know doesn't exist. The world exists, wood exists, metal exists, trees exist, mountains exist, but what we call them, what we define them as, and all of the laws of nature that governs that, it doesn't exist. Money is just like anything else in society. It's an illusion. It's abstract. It's a concept. And it's hard for when you're awake, because you still have to exist in that realm. You still have to play the game. The difference is that now you know it's a game. I had a conversation recently with one of my friends, one of my closest friends, who is also awake. And he's having a hard time dealing with it. Because when you wake up, you get a dose of cosmic consciousness, and you see everything for what it really is, and for what it's not. And he's pretty much given up and quit society, and he's withdrawn. And he asked me, how can I still do it? How do I keep going knowing everything is false, is fake? And I told him that it's because I know it's a game, that I'm going to play it for the sake of playing it, with gusto. You see, that's the thing about the universe. It doesn't need to be explained. The universe does its stuff for the sake of doing its stuff. It doesn't have to have a reason. That's a human concept. Everything has to have a reason. The sense of it is that it makes no sense. Then you also realize the understanding and the concept of polarity, polar thinking, that everything is connected. You take a magnet. A magnet cannot exist unless it has a positive and a negative side. If you take away one, it ceases to become a magnet. A coin will always have a front and back. They may be different, but they are two sides of the same whole. And in that way is all of life. You cannot separate them. If you do, it ceases to become a coin. We tend to think that we are separate from nature, that we are different. But if you removed man from his environment, you would find that he wouldn't survive. And I've heard arguments about, well, there's just no way that humanity contributes to the universe, to planet Earth. We're killing it. We're doing all these things. And to an extent, that's true. But what were you before you were born? Humans tend to think that we are just a flash of consciousness between two eternal darknesses. When were you born? When did you first become you? Was it at conception? Was it at partition? When did you begin? You see, we can't answer that. because we don't have any memory of it. But you see, that is precisely the point. There is no need to have a memory of it. I don't presume to know. I don't have the answers. No one does. I know what I know based off of what I don't know. And that's all that I know. But everything that I am saying, everything that I think, everything that I feel, it's no different than you. Because I understood it at once when I woke up. I thought this whole time I wanted to be awake, and I think that's what sped it up. I wanted to wake up. I didn't know what I was asking for. But the best way I can put it is like this. I saw a gate, a very imposing gate with all these locks on it, and this wall that was just impenetrable. You couldn't climb it. You had to go through this door. And then, over the course of my journey, while being in Washington, and meeting all of these people, and learning all of these things, learning to truly be open-minded, those locks started opening. And then finally that door opened, and I walked through it. And then when I turned around, I realized that the gate and the wall was gone. It was never there to begin with. I was already there the whole time. I just didn't know it. So to be awakened is not a journey. You don't have to gain experience. You don't have to be wise from failures. It helps. But you can become Buddha instantaneously. Without thought, without trying. You can be sitting in traffic, going to your 9-to-5 job, and just suddenly wake up. It happens. But there is no journey to take. You are already there. There is nothing to fix about you. Everything about you, your virtues, your vices, your flaws, and your positive traits, all of it is a perfect manifestation of nature. Who you are. That's why you can never help yourself. You can't self-improve. I used to believe that. We think we've been taught that we must always look higher than ourselves because we are wretched, lowly subjects to this old man with whiskers who sits on a throne in heaven. And we don't really think about God that way. That version of God is dead. But in the back of my mind, I always thought that there was some paternal king who's always watching me, every move I ever made. And then I understood that that was just somebody else's opinion that I bought into. And it drives us crazy because there is no way in the Christian sense that you can ever live up to be like Christ because you don't have the benefit of being the boss's son, for one. And the more you realize through your failures of not being able to be Christ-like, the better off you are. So we're taught in this culture, in this society, that you must always look higher than yourselves. You don't have the answers, but God does. Or that preacher who goes up on the pulpit 52 Sundays a year, 53 Sundays a year, and his essential message is be good, be like Christ. In all things, think like Christ. But you can't. But when I tell you that you have all the answers, everything that I'm saying to you, I didn't learn, I didn't study, I didn't go to church, even though I was a devout Christian. When I woke up, I realized I had everything I ever needed the whole time. So do you. There's no need to self-improve. If you have addictions or vices that you wish to get rid of, well, the simplest way to do it is just to not do it. There's no trick to it. It just requires effort. But you don't have to change your vices. You don't have to do any of that. You are who you are, and you don't know who that is. I don't know. Not really. I have an idea. But we identify ourselves with our ego, and you are not your ego. So to be awakened, you become a joker. You're able to fit in any role in society because you realize it's all a role. It's a theater. When you're a kid, you're taught how to act, are you not? What are good acts? What are bad acts? What is acceptable? We get applauded for doing good things, and we get bashed and scolded for doing wrong things. You're taught how to fit into a role in society because society is a grand theater. It's a grand play, and you need to find your role in that play. Parents always tell their kids, find something you're good at and then do that. You know, you got to contribute to this grand scheme, this grand lie. And so we are taught how to act. We're taught how to be fakes. Do you know what the word person means? When someone says that you ought to be a real person, you ought to have a consistent character, that just means that you become inflexible. And a real person means genuine fake. Because person comes from the Greek word persona. And in the Greco-Roman plays of that time, persona was masks. It's what the masks that the actors wore. And at the beginning of every play, they would come and announce all of the personas that would be portrayed. And it was just a list of the masks, the characters. And we're utterly obsessed with novels and movies and Hollywood. And we're told from a very young age that you ought to have a consistent character, just like they are in the movies and in the novels. When you're a child, you already know that that's not feasible. I mean, when you're with your mom and dad, you're one person. When you're with your friends, you're someone completely different. When you're with your aunt and your uncle, you're someone different. When you're at church, you're someone different. And it's perfectly fine. It's only as we get older does that get stamped out, and we're taught to be a genuine person, to be a real fake. And so you understand that life is a play. And the Joker understands this. The awakened understand this. And so I have chosen to continue playing for the sake of playing. I don't have anything to tell you. I don't have anything to teach you. I don't have anything to show you. I don't have anything to sell you. I don't do this for my health. I don't do this to make money. I know that there are people out there that are just that close to waking up. So just open up your eyes. There's nothing you can do with this information. You can't change the world. The world doesn't need changing. What is considered very chaotic on one level can be completely harmonious on another. If you were to look at the bloodstream, blood vessels inside of your body through a microscope, you would see all sorts of things, love affairs, one microorganism devouring another microorganism. And if you looked just at that level, at a certain point you'd want to start taking sides, because it's just a war going on. But zoom out of that magnification and look at the human body, and all of that chaos, all of that, I guess, well, in a sense, a bloodbath, is harmonious for your body. It works. So what is considered chaotic to us in our lives from day to day, all of your aches and your pains and your depression and your anxiety is harmonious on another level. We just can't see it. In some ways, to be awakened allows you to see that, or at the very least understand it. If you can't change the world, change your world and how you view it. I'm still learning. Most people don't want to hear what I have to say because they're so enveloped, they are so into the game that they don't want to be told that it's a joke. They don't want to be laughed at. So I've chosen this platform. I was deeply inspired by Alan Watts and the lectures that he gave. And he was, in a lot of ways, the final locks on that door that disappeared. I would never wish for anyone to become awakened. But just know that it doesn't make your life easier. It gives you more clarity. It gives you an understanding of what's really going on. So to be awake is to be a joker, and to understand that everything in society is a game. And you learn the rules of the game. And the number one rule is this is not a game. It's serious. There's no mucking about. And there is no such thing as someone being right and someone else being wrong. What I believe, what I have faith in, my ideas and my opinions are just that. They're just opinions. That is the number one thing you learn about being awake, is there's no such thing as an absolute truth. Because truth is perception. And your perception is utterly unique to you. Because even though we all use the same eyes, we all have the same ears, and to greater or lesser degrees, we have the same brain functions. We all see the world completely different. Because that is subject to your experiences, your failures, how you were raised and who you were raised by, the influences around you. There is no way for any one person to have the right way of it. And so I have come to accept that. But what I'm telling you is the same thing that Buddha told you. It's the same thing that Jesus, the same thing that Krishna said, Mahamarami said. Is that we are all one with this cosmic universe. We are all sons of God. You call it whatever you like. It doesn't make the slightest bit of difference.